rồng ngày tháng thu binh áo dễ đầy đủ đầy rồng đường là lại chỉ là vẻ vẻ nên ai đâu mà cứ phụ con một tâm mình chỉ mình làm show á, họ đây họ rock quá đấy, rồi rồng ngày tháng thu binh áo dễ đầy đủ đầy rồng đường là lại chỉ là vẻ vẻ nên ai đâu mà cứ phụ con một tâm mình chỉ mình làm show á, họ đây họ rock quá đấy, rồi
It is very good to be back after a 2-week trip to Cambodia to conduct the medical mission trip. We had not been able to conduct the trip since 2020 was our last big one, and of course I went in February a year ago, but it was more of a seminars, and we did some medical treatment, but not that much. But sometimes people think, oh, you only went for 2 weeks. It is get up at 4 in the morning and go to bed about 9 at night, and it's non-stop for an entire 2 weeks. And Sakoma he's like a taskmaster. I mean, he's just going all the time. And so the doctors and the nurses and the dentists and so on, I mean, by the end of 2 weeks, we're all ready to just drop. And so, but there's a lot of work that's done during that period of time. I thank God so much for the elders in the church here willing to let me go, and appreciate that it's a round-trip ticket that I'm able to come back. And it's a preacher's paradise in Cambodia because the gospel is so new in that country. And so it's just it's a great blessing and opportunity. And I thank Hai so much wherever he is this morning. I thank God for him teaching and preaching while I was gone. I want to start a little bit of culture. Some of you have seen some of the culture before. I don't have that much, but a little bit of it, just to give you a little bit of idea what goes on over there. Every day we get up in the dark, finish in the dark, and on the bus at the end of the day, a lot of times Sakoma would say, he'd get on the microphone and say, I'm very sorry, but we have to get up extra early tomorrow because our hotel, there's no hotels by where we're doing our ministry that are safe to stay in, so we have to drive an hour and a half to get to the village where we're going to do the work. And so this is traffic inside the city there. But out in the country, which most of the country is country, there's cattle on the road and motorbikes, and people are going on the wrong lanes and driving all over the place. But about 97% of the country is still Buddhist, and there's about 2% Muslim. We had a few Muslims in our classes, but for the majority of it, it's going to be either Buddhists or newer believers that have come to believe in Jesus in the recent past. We did have some house church leaders, people that we've been working with for a few years, and that's really good to have the house church leaders there because they're able to do the follow-up. It's interesting in the city when the traffic light turns red, all the motorbikes fill in all the holes, and but that's part of the culture. Is the driving, of course, is always exciting. You can see the Buddhist stuff he's got, the bus driver has hanging down in front of him there. This is unfortunately a common scene in Cambodia because during the war 75 to 79, 1975 to 1979, Sakom says 3 years, 8 months, 20 days. He knows exactly how long it was because of the difficulties that he went through. But one of the tragedies from the war was that the Khmer Rouge Communist Party put landmines all over the country, and they have not uncovered all of them yet. And so we had a student in our school, graduated about 5 years ago, saying that was missing a leg. But you'll see, it's really, every village you go to, there'll be somebody there that has a leg missing because of the stepping on a landmine when they were out farming or something. And it's just a sad. Now the UN has gone in and supposedly has uncovered all of them, but it's still a very, very sad situation. This is the Cambodia 7-Eleven in the village areas. There's nothing there. I never opened my wallet for 2 weeks, and over here I'm buying lunch for people all the time, and right, Frank? And but over there I didn't open my wallet for 2 weeks because there's just nothing. There's nothing you're going to buy in the villages, and there's nothing you can eat in the villages, not out of a place like that. When we would eat, they would put all the Americans at one table, and they brought us. We got the food everybody else was eating, but there's some of the foods they didn't bring to our table because and if they felt a little bit insulted by it, Sakom would tell them, well, Americans have weak stomachs, so he'd insult us. And of course, we didn't know. I know he was saying it because he told me before he told. But then it made the restaurant person feel better. And it's interesting. This is a very common scene. This is kind of one of the transportation devices that they'll use. There may be 15 people on it and so on. Sometimes you'll see a cattle truck and it'll have 100 young people on it, and they're all standing up like sardines, and they're talking and laughing. It's just the way they live. They're riding down the road, headed to the factory, to the sweatshop to do their work, and some are on their phones talking, and it's just kind of they just do life that way. This young guy is a sad thing. In the background, you see those are rubber trees. You see those black cups at the bottom. They slice. I didn't know. My kids used to think money grew on trees. I didn't know rubber grew on trees. And they'll slice the bottom, cut a slit in the bottom of the tree, and the rubber will drain down into those cups. And then they'll leave it for a few days and go back and slit it again. So there'll be workers that's all they do. There must have been 5 miles of rows like that with 100 or 200 trees in each row, and it's a million rubber trees in this area where we were in east of the capital a little bit. Somehow this young guy got burned by some of the rubber. I don't know how it happened, but he did. But you'll notice he's got a red piece of yarn tied around his wrist. A lot of people, or the Buddhists, have some voodoo in their religion as well. And so you get a piece of yarn like that blessed by the Buddhist priest, and you tie that on, and that's to protect you from the evil spirits. And you see some of that. You'll see some of that in a little bit. Of course, children, it's amazing. Sambat, he's one of the house church leaders over there, and he works with another guy, I guess, that does most of the preaching. But they have, it's the biggest church I've heard of in the villages. There's 50 adults and 200 children. That's a lot of kids. And there's children everywhere in the country as they start to grow again after a lot of the millions of people that were killed by the Khmer Rouge, Pol Pot killing field times. So about once or twice a month, we do a feeding at CCM. CCM, at Cambodia Christian Ministries, we have about 80 acres of land. All of the money that we've made on these golf tournaments that we have every fall, and we make $40,000 to $50,000 on a golf tournament, all 9 golf tournaments, so $400,000 plus $1,000, all of that money's gone into our land. We bought tractors, and of course we've had other people give to us to help with some of these things, but we've got about 80 acres of land and tractors, 2 excavators, 2 dump trucks, 25 passenger bus, 15 passenger van, skid steer, 2 water well drilling trucks. And we have, it's a massive operation. And our goal is by 2024 to become self-supporting, so we're not relying on as much American money. And so we're going to have up to 2,000 coconut trees planted, and we lost 50,000 fish again in the last flood that went through there, and we're building the levee to prevent that from happening in the future. But anyway, about once or twice a month, we bring 200 plus children in from the area villages, and our guys will go pick them up. So they'll get a 15 passenger van, and they'll put 50 kids in that van, and they'll be in the back of the pickup truck, and there'll be 50 kids in the back of a pickup truck. And of course they drive slow, but they're on these backcountry roads. There's about 12 villages that surround CCM that we can see, one here, and if you drive 3 minutes you can see another village over there, and so on. And so we bring these kids in, and people give money to feed the children. They are very, very, very poor. The villages are very poor. And so for them, they have some sort of a nutritious meal with some meat and so on, because that's very rare. They eat rice 3 times a day. When we're there, we eat rice 3 times a day. And I've mentioned before, they ask me, like in America, how often do you eat rice? And I say, well, I eat more rice in 2 weeks here than I eat all year in America. Oh, they think that's the funniest thing in the world. And they can't believe that, because it's just, they don't even say, you want to go get something to eat, or you want to go have lunch? They want to go have rice? That's how they say it, because it's always rice. And then they'll have other things along with it. But sometimes that's all they have. So we feed these kids once or twice a month, and we may do it more if we have the funds to do it. But it's a tremendous opportunity, because in the future, these kids are going to remember CCM, and they're going to come at some point to know more about Jesus, because our students work with them before they eat. They work with them and they teach them a little English. That Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so, and the kids learn to sing it. I've got a video that I'll show from one of the villages with some high school kids in a little bit. But this is a highlight of the trip. This is at CCM in the barn. We buy trays, and it's a lot of kids. We buy the trays and the chopsticks, etc., and they share trays sometimes if there's too many more kids than we thought we were going to have. But the parents really appreciate it. A lot of the parents now, they don't even come over. They know us. They love us. And so they say we're going to Jesus' place to get, and I've told the story before, the Buddhists over there call us, our place is called Jesus' place. That's what they call us. We're called Jesus people. When we had a flood and we lost a bunch of fish, the fish that went downstream were not native to that area, and they said those are fish from Jesus' place. And one of the preachers that I know said, even your fish are preaching Jesus over there. And pretty cool. So we found a new orphanage, and not just one, but more than one. This is way up by Laos. There's 20 children in this orphanage. Of course, the older ones, maybe a couple of them have aged out, but they stay and they help with the little children. And they have a couple of women that help as well. That guy on the left he runs the orphanage. He gets a whopping salary of $40 per month to take care of these kids. That's what he lives on. And the kids are just precious, but we have some other orphans that we're taking care of, and a couple of the women there get paid about $25 a month to help. And but it's a great work, and this guy does a great job, and he's becoming one of our house church leaders. So they have a Christian worship there of sorts, and so Sacom will go back to that area and work with house church leaders. But there's more than one orphanage, so we're going to try to get plugged in. They get some outside funds, but it's not enough. The two of the main orphanages that we work with, they get $16 a month per child, which is, 50 cents a day, which is absolutely, positively not enough. And so we give several $100s, we supplement it, and then we have our doctors go out to there about every 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks. Our doctors go out and do checkups on the children and help them. We did have a full-time nurse, male nurse, 60-year-old guy that was working with the kids, teaching them hygiene and so on, because they'll be sitting on the concrete floor that's filthy, and they'll be eating a big bowl of rice in the middle, and there's cats and dogs walking through the area, and it's the hygiene is bad, and they get sick, they don't know how to treat it, and so on, and so we're trying to help in all those areas and partner with some of the people that are doing the work. So we do two things. In Matthew chapter 4, verse 23, it says, Jesus went throughout all the villages and towns of Galilee, teaching and preaching the gospel and healing all sorts of diseases and sicknesses. And our mission statement for Cambodia Christian Ministries, our mission statement is that Matthew 4:23 and Matthew 9:35, that we go and teach and we go and we preach. We never do just one. So we never go to a village and just say, we're going to come here and talk to you today about Jesus. We never go to a village and just do medical. We always do them together. And of course, we're not doing it for our sake. We're doing it so the Lord gets the glory. But we always say we come in the name of Jesus and have come to provide for you. Because in the villages, they don't have doctors or nurses. There may be a nurse, maybe there's a clinic 30 miles away, and it serves an entire region. And so when they get sick over there, one of our doctors that came is a plastic surgeon, and I'll mention him later, but the guy had a big lump on the inside of his mouth. When he pulled his lip open, it was the size of about as big around as size of a dime, but it was round, a big circle, a tumor looked like. So he cut it open, and he took that guy had been going around like that for maybe years, who knows how long. And he found the surgeon found underneath a fish bone that was in there, and it infected that area. And that guy had zero chance. That guy was going to live like that till it went away or till he died. That was the way where it went away somehow. And so to go into these villages and do medical, the people are, when we get there, they're standing around just staring at our bus as we pull in. This was our team. Of course, there were 12,261 patient treatments, so some of probably we had 9,000 or 10,000 people, but a lot of people, maybe 9,000, they might get their, we don't do any filling cavities or anything like that. It's all, they just pull teeth left and right all day long, these dentists, which is, that's kind of an area I don't go to. I can't do it. And I'd have to be on nitrous oxide to go in there and look. And but anyway, they might get eyeglasses, reading glasses, and they might get a tooth pulled, or they might go see the doctor and get glasses or whatever. And they get a lot of great treatment. So we had on this trip, this was the most international trip that we had. We had 2 Canadians, and Kevin and Catherine Carson were missionaries on what's called the Ship of Life. Ship of Life was like a yacht, a big launch that had room down below for people to sleep in, and it had a dental area and a doctor's area, an x-ray machine, etc. And they went up and down the Mekong River, and people that had lived in these remote villages in the middle of nowhere, and they would treat patients along the river. So our own Katie Huber, who went home to be with the Lord several years ago, she had been on that Ship of Life as a nurse and did medical treatment. So Kevin and Catherine were not strangers to Cambodia. They were on that ship for 2 years helping. He did the coordinating, and Catherine's a nurse, specializes in wound care, and so they worked there. Well, they came along on the trip. Kevin had been in Cambodia last fall for a couple of weeks with us, and then they brought a Korean woman who lives in Canada, Jenny. She came along with them. And then we had 5 Filipinos, eye doctors and dentists, who join us every year, and we had Vietnamese, I believe. We had 2 Chinese doctors who live in Australia. One's the wife, Jolene, is an ER doctor, which an ER doctor, and they got to fix stab wounds and broken bones and everything. She's amazing, and her husband's a plastic surgeon. So he did a lot of photography while he was there because no machines to do plastic surgery, but he goes into the capital and he's with Smile Cambodia, and they do the cleft palate thing and so on. And they were amazing to have on. We had 5 Americans, and we had our preacher students and some graduates, some other workers from CCM, cooks and so on that came along and just helped serve. We have our own 3 doctors. We have 3 full-time doctors that work with us at CCM, and of course they don't get paid like doctors in America. And then we contract with about 10 or 12 Cambodia military doctors. So they get time off away from working in the military. They want to help their people in the villages, but they don't know they don't know organized way to do it. So CCM has made contact with them over the years, so they know. We have some of the same doctors come with us every year. And they're all Buddhists, and they sit in on our devotionals, because we'll have devotionals on the bus. We have devotionals in the hotel at night. Sometimes after we eat dinner, we'll have a devotional. So one of the people gets up and talks. I might talk one night, and Mark Banks talks another night, and so on. So anyway, these 10 to 12 Cambodia doctors, they're great. They love serving with us, and they work. I mean, they'll eat lunch. As soon as they're done with lunch, their table's empty. They're back in their room. And they do a great job. And then of course Mark Banks from North Carolina. Mark's been with me. This was his 11th trip with me. Randall Dice, who's an elder in Waxahachie, and his grandson Caleb, who's one of the ministers with the homeless people at Main Street Church downtown Dallas, came. And then Colby Babb, who was the young guy that was baptized here New Year's Day, he came with us. He did those 2 guys did. They were unbelievable. So all that plus a partridge and a pear tree, we had a lot of people that came with us. We had about 60 probably on the total trip, and that's the CCM bus. It's like a 25-passenger bus, and of course Rod Neely and from Reno and the photographer Jonathan, videographer, they came along. They went early and videoed Sacombe because they're going to do a documentary on the life of Sacombe. And so they were there as well. This is Jonathan with his drone taking a picture. So that's Jonathan in the front and Rod in the back. Rod has preached here a couple of times. Those are all the Cambodia doctors, and then Dr. Jolene in the green there, and Catherine in the grayish outfit there. So all of our clinics this time took place in schools, public schools. So we would go into a school in Cambodia. Everything's the same there. All the chairs are the same color. I was telling our class this morning, they're all the same chairs. They might be red and blue, but they're all the same chairs. The buildings are all the same. All the schools, the buildings go all, classrooms all around the outside, courtyard in the middle. So we pull in a bus, and they shut down the classes. Kids get 2 days off. We do 2 days in each village. And Sacombe will get up and speak to the people. And, a lot of people might come in from another country. They're not a Christian group, and they help the people. And they kind of come in, kind of talk down these poor village people that don't have anything. Sacom comes in and he bows before them, which is very unusual, bows before them and says, we've come here in the name of Jesus. We've come as your servants, servants of the Lord to help you. And the people are just, they love Sacom. And then he introduces our whole group. But Mark and I teach inside of classrooms, public school classrooms. We teach Bible in there. Colby and Caleb taught Bible to the young people, and they had to be a little bit restricted because some of the parents might have complained. So they taught out of Proverbs mostly. This is the dental work. That's Peter. He's from the Philippines. He's been with us 3, 4, 5, 6 times. This is the inside of a classroom. So if you complain about your school over here, young people, you need to look at the classrooms there. Those are their bench tables. Usually have 3 kids at each table. So we have doctors all around the inside of it. There should be doctor, all the way around the inside of the room. They line up outside, and our students do the crowd control. So there might be a line of people 100 feet back, and they're all standing there waiting to get in, and they just kind of come in, they sit down on a chair. There'd be like 10 chairs, and they wait. Okay, now that chair come in, and someone comes in from outside, and they move down. Everybody moves down one, and it's very regimented. One morning they got kind of wild, and when the door opened, they piled in on the doctors. They weren't going to wait. And so the doctors agreed. They sat down, and they said, we're not going to do anything for 30 minutes till you all clear out of here. So nobody would leave, so the doctors just sat there. So after a while, the people realized we're not going to get any help if we don't do what they say. So all the people went back out, and then they got in line again and started over, and it went well. So Dr. Jolene brought a portable. She's great to have along because if you get sick over there, she's the one to go to if you have any sort of medical problem. And she did treat several of our people. We didn't have any major issues, but we had at least 6 people that had to stay back at least one day for eating something that didn't set right. And she was, one of the guys had swollen feet. She had to deal with that. She had some compression socks and some water pills. So she's just treating our 60 people. She's just busy working with the rest of us, but she didn't have to deal with me this time, so I was happy about that. But I waited till I got home to get sick. So she brought a portable sonogram unit and checked people with various abdominal issues, but especially she worked with pregnant women, and it's just so cute.
The baby's head is here, the leg is here, yeah. So you might feel the kick here, yeah? Is that where you feel the kick? Around here? Yeah, the baby's head is here now, the spine, and the heart, yeah, over here. That's gorgeous, isn't it?
It shows up on her phone.
It's beautiful.
Congratulations.
She's so happy.
Yeah.
Getting some help. So it's just a great addition to what we do. And Dr. Jolene wants to come with us. This is her second trip. We're automatic. She wants to be with us. She told me when she's a Christian, when she graduated from medical school, she said, I went to Angola, is that Africa? She went, in the desert area or whatever, stayed out there for 6 weeks, no electricity, worked with some tribes and treating them. And she said, I told the Lord I wanted to give the first fruits of my medical school to Him. And so I went 6 weeks and went out in the middle of nowhere and served God. She said, there's no electricity, so when it got dark, it was over. I had a mosquito net over me, and she said it was beautiful. So she's really a spiritual girl and has been a tremendous asset to our group. And then she bought that portable sonogram thing. She doesn't want to leave it there quite yet. She wants to make sure our doctors know how to use it, but great asset. So Dr. Elvis from the Philippines, she's joined us for a couple years now doing the eyeglasses. This is the CVS pharmacy. Cambodia is very sick, and that's a look at the medicine. I guess they end up with the right ones. That's all I don't pay any attention to it. The good thing about prescriptions over there, because you might have a pharmacist in the village area that he's actually a rice farmer, but he came up with enough money to buy a license to have a pharmacy. So people will come to him. They don't go to a doctor because there's no doctor. and I'm having this problem or that problem. Well, try this here, you know. So he just gives them medicine, and he doesn't know what he's doing. And so when our doctors treat them, they write them a prescription. Now they have the exact medicine. They go to our pharmacy. It's free. We spend about $25,000 on medicine. And the prescriptions are all free from money that people give us. And the total trip was about $50,000. You know, we had hotels. We don't pay airfare for anybody, but we do when they get there. We don't charge anybody anything to work, which is good. And but we don't pay anybody. We pay the contract, the doctors from Cambodia, but Filipinos, the Americans, the Australian doctors, the Cambodians, they don't get anything. They do it as a mission work. And but once they get their prescription written, they take it, get it filled, then they keep their prescription. So the next time they have that issue, they know exactly what medicine to get, and they can continue to go back and get in America, you get a prescription one time, that's it. If you want more antibiotics or whatever, you got to go back to the doctor. Over there, you can keep that sheet of paper. You can go back and get it filled several times. And somebody else in the village maybe had a throat problem, and you know about that. Then you get their sheet, and you go to the pharmacy, and you get that medicine from the pharmacist. And so we really have done. There's a residual, continuing blessing to the people with that. So the teaching is great, and of course in Matthew 9, this really is the heart and soul of our ministry. I want to read this. Matthew 9:35, Jesus was going about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom and healing every kind of disease and every kind of sickness. And seeing the multitudes, he felt compassion for them because they were distressed and downcast like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Therefore, beseech the Lord of the harvest to send out workers into his harvest." And this is the reason, people sometimes ask me if I have brain damage, why I go over there, but this is it right there. The multitudes are like sheep without a shepherd. They're distressed, downcast. They have nothing. They have no understanding what happens to them after they die. They have no idea who God is, and a lot of them don't even know their Buddhism very well. They're just doing it. And so to go there and share Jesus is an unbelievable fulfillment of this passage. But Jesus sees the multitudes, feels compassion for them, heals their diseases, but preaches the gospel. Because if you go in and you heal somebody, and then they die 40 years later and they don't go to heaven, what have you done? So we want to make sure that we do both of these things. We had a total of 565 students in the 5 villages we went to, so a little over 100 students. Probably it was more than that. 50 house church leaders. So these are people that are newer believers that have started to teach people. And so they come to our seminars, and they may go to some other people's seminars as well. But they like ours. They say, you're the ones that really teach the Bible, and you don't just tell us things. And then there were 12 people. Sometimes there's more than that. In 2010, there were 93 Buddhists baptized at one place. And it just depends, we don't push baptism. We preach Jesus. There's a big difference. And so a lot of times we'll take them right up to the edge. We really preach strongly about Jesus for 2 days and tell them what the response needs to be. And we can see they're not ready, so we just back off. At least they know. And now we maybe come through a next year where a house church leader will be there. He'll do follow-up, and then they'll become Christians. So we do as much as we can to introduce Jesus and let it go from there. So sometimes we would teach by ourselves and have our interpreter. Sometimes we would teach it together, and sometimes we teach inside. Sometimes there wasn't enough room inside. So the numbers aren't really accurate because there were more people than 565, but that was the bus we had. They tried to paint it Minnesota Viking purple for me, but they missed. But that was our big bus. Then we had the smaller bus and then the van as well. So this is what it looks like when we come into a village for the most part. A sea of people. When the bus pulls in, the people are just watching. They just watch the bus come in. They don't get any medical care. They're just so, and they're the friendliest, most humble, gracious, precious people on the planet. They're just so, we just make instant connection with them. And of course, Sacom, they look at Sacom. He is Cambodian, but he has an accent. He was in the U.S. for 30 years. And he dresses like an American, or he dresses like me. He has cargo pants. My kids won't let me wear cargo pants in the U.S., so I have cargo pants over there because I like all them pockets. Anyway, so Sacom, he's wearing his cargo pants and his blue shirt, and he's talking to the people, and they're just spellbound by Sacom. They love him because he talks to them. He's one of them. He talks about where he's from, and he says, I'm from Swairean. Swairean is known as the beggar province because how poor it was. And so he just identifies with them, and sometimes he'll talk to them about his days in the killing fields. And when he talks about the killing fields and how they killed family members and they tortured him and put him in prison, they were going to kill him. They pulled him back out. I found out a month ago that at the end, there were 330 or so that were in the prison he was in, which all it was a Buddhist temple and monk area that they shut. All monks had to take off their orange outfits, and during Khmer Rouge time, 3 years, 8 months, 20 days, they had to take it off or they would be killed immediately. There's no religion. Pol Pot started the calendar over in 1975. That was year one. And it's kind of like, whoo, and wiped out all the currency, evacuated the cities, people starving, people dying, millions died. So Sacom at the end, in that prison with over 300 people, at the end of 2 years, there were less than 30 people left. They'd kill them or they'd die of starvation or disease. He was one of the 30 that was left. They tied all their hands behind their back and they brought them down to the river. And they had AK-47s. They were gonna. The war was ending. So there were some Russian jets that flew over. So Vietnam, communist Vietnamese, had Russian support. They were coming to take out Pol Pot, the Khmer Rouge. And when they saw those jets flying over, the guards are going to run. So they tie up all the prisoners, take them down to the river, and they're going to kill them all. When the jets come over the second time, they pulled off their guns and took off running. And Sacom, standing at the river, thought it was, he said, I didn't care anymore. He was ready to die. And the soldiers fled. They untied each other, and then he went home. Unbelievable. And of course, then after that, the Viet Cong was trying to kill him later. And so when he tells people his story, the Cambodia people, they're just blown away by the fact that he would come back to Cambodia is unheard of. He even says people come back for money or for power or women. He said, I've come back to share the good news. He doesn't say good news. I've come back to share the good news of Jesus Christ with you. And the people are like confused by it. They're just blown away by his love for them. He says, the love of God has sent me here. And the people, they love Sacom. Colby's teaching in the classroom, Book of Proverbs to the children. They all thought that Elvis had come. They liked Colby. Caleb was teaching them English and Jesus Loves Me at the same time, trying to teach them. This is the best they could do because this is their first exposure probably to English.
Yes, Jesus loves me. Yes,
there's their classroom. No electricity.
Yes, Jesus loves me.
And they loved it. That song will stick with them, and years down the road may lead them to Christ. There's Mark Banks teaching. There I'm teaching outside the classroom because we had too many people, and there weren't enough to get in the room. And so we taught outside. Patrick, the plastic surgeon, took his drone and went under the tent, came over the back of my head at one point, and the people are like, wow, they were blown away by that. And then they ask questions. So when they ask questions, we tell them we don't answer questions without Bible. So they ask questions. I don't remember the picture being taken. but we're digging and searching, trying to answer a million different questions that they'll come up with once they warm up to us. That's Randall Dice teaching there, and that's Kevin Carson, who did our Sunday morning Bible class at the worship at the orphanage. And I have a few stories I want to close with, 3 scriptures and 3 different people. First one is Acts chapter 19. In Acts chapter 19, Paul is in Ephesus. And of course, it's very similar to Cambodia today with the superstitious religions and the voodoo and so on. People brought their handkerchiefs and aprons. Evil spirits would go out. There were Jewish exorcists there and so on. And so in verse 19, it says, many of those who practiced magic brought their books together and began burning them in the sight of all. And they counted up the price of them and found it to be 50,000 pieces of silver. And so one of the things that happens is, like this guy, we didn't know if he had leprosy, or that's what some of the people in the village said. He just all scabs everywhere and swollen fingers and toes and so on. But he said it comes and goes, so I don't know what it is, but his wife was with him. Both of them were baptized, but he admitted that he had a belt that he paid to have blessed to keep the evil spirits away from him. And so he said, I want that removed. And we tell him, listen, Jesus can take out all the evil spirits all at once with a blink of his eye. Jesus has all the power. Jesus is alive. Jesus died, but Jesus rose from the dead after he paid for our sins, and he went back to heaven. Jesus is alive. He's not like Siddhartha Gautama of Buddhism, who's dead, or Muhammad, who's dead. Jesus is alive and has all the power because he's God. So you don't need to be afraid of evil spirits anymore. That's such a relief to the people. And so sometimes we'll burn their belt with palm branches, start a fire and burn them in front of all the people, and they'll clap. And they like the fact that they like Jesus and like that he has this power. They don't have to have that fear anymore. Then in Acts chapter 8, it says Saul began ravaging the church. And it says in Acts chapter 8, verse 4, those who had been scattered went about preaching the word. So what happens is Saul of Tarsus tries to wipe out Christianity, persecuting the Christians in Jerusalem, and so they scatter. So it has a reverse effect. Instead of it shutting down Christianity, Christianity spreads because the Christians take off and they go other places to talk about Jesus. And so it's not just the apostles who are preaching Jesus, everybody's preaching Jesus. And it is true for every Christian. That's why on New Year's Day, the ABCs for 2023 is to be like Andrew, that we need to invite people, we need to share Jesus, and invite people to come to hear the truth about Jesus rather than just religion or rather than just feeling good, that they want to have a relationship with the God who created them. And so this woman on the right, the woman on the left is a Buddhist, and she's come to our seminar to learn. The woman on the right is a newer believer, and she says, no, I don't need the house church leader. I don't need him to teach. I know this woman. I'll teach her. And so she just jumped right up, went over and sat down by her, and this is during break, and they start talking about Jesus, and she's going to help her, which is the best way for the good news to spread. The other passage is in the book of Mark. In Mark chapter 10, starting in verse 13, it says, they were bringing children to Jesus so that he might touch them, and the disciples rebuked them. But when Jesus saw this, he was indignant and said to them, permit the children to come to me. Do not hinder them, for the kingdom of God belongs to such as these. Truly I say to you, whoever does not receive the kingdom of God like a child shall not enter it at all. And he took them in his arms and began blessing them, laying his hands on them. And so one of our major efforts in Cambodia is that I think that we're going to see the effects that CCM has in Cambodia of sharing Jesus and blessing people is going to multiply greatly in the next decade because of the young people that are growing up. And it's good or bad, whatever, it's okay to take advantage of it, that the young people love Christians, they love Christianity, and they love English, and so the young people, when we come there, they just gather around. They'll just stare at you in these villages because they don't see, we had some Asians, but no black people, but with the white people, they just stare at you. And it's interesting, when I would teach, I'd teach for 10, 15 minutes, I'd sit down. Mark would get up, teach for 10, 15 minutes and sit down. Randall gets up for 10 or 15 minutes and they give him an ovation. They all clap for him. And because they have great respect for old people. So I thought, well, I'm okay with that. Apparently they think I'm young, I don't know. But the ladies at the Mesquite Church made dresses. That last picture is that little baby is holding what they call an ouch baby. So if you got a pain in your belly or something, it's kind of to help them emotionally. You squeeze your ouch baby to help you feel better. And we brought a box of those along. And then they took pillowcases and they make dresses out of them. And then we had, I don't know how many I had a couple hundred of them that we handed out. But of course, our goal in the mission trip is the same message that we have here. Our message is always going to be about Jesus. And everything we do, how we worship, how we live our daily lives, how we treat other people, the way we live a holy life versus a sinful life, and how we love one another, and that our lives are involved with letting God use us to help other people. That's all flows out of Jesus. Everything has to be anchored in Jesus, or it's not worthwhile. And so any question anybody ever asks me in Cambodia or here, I don't care what it is, I'll always bring them back to Jesus. Everything revolves around him and flows out of Jesus Christ.